The rain-slicked streets of Chicago gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights, turning the windy city into a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. In the heart of the Loop, where skyscrapers pierced the stormy sky like jagged crowns, Elena Vasquez hurried through the downpour, her coat pulled tight against the chill wind whipping off Lake Michigan. She was late. Again. As a single mom juggling freelance coding gigs and her 8-year-old son's endless energy, time was a luxury she couldn't afford. But tonight, the freelance job she'd taken on the side felt like a lifeline, pulling her deeper into a world she knew better than to trust. Elena's apartment in Pilsen was a modest 2-bedroom. Walls thin enough to hear the neighbors' arguments, but thick with the warmth of her life with Marco. The boy was her anchor, with his curly dark hair and eyes that sparkled like his late father's. She'd buried that grief years ago, after the accident that left her widowed and wary. Now, at 32, she coded for survival, ethical hacks for small businesses, nothing that crossed lines. But desperation had a way of blurring those edges. The client this time was anonymous, paying top dollar for a penetration test on a private network. Just audit the vulnerabilities, the encrypted email had said. No data extraction. She ducked into a dimly lit internet cafe on Wabash Avenue, the kind with flickering neon signs and the perpetual hum of cooling fans. The air smelled of stale coffee and overheated electronics. Elena slid into a booth, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder, and fired up her machine. The VPN connected with a soft chime, masking her IP as she probed the target's firewall. It was sophisticated, layers of encryption that screamed corporate, maybe finance. But as her scripts ran, an anomaly flickered on her screen. A backdoor, sloppy, almost deliberate. Her fingers paused over the keys. This wasn't just a test. It felt like an invitation. Across the city, in the fortified penthouse atop the Blackstone Tower, Luca Moretti stared at his array of monitors, the glow casting harsh lines on his sharp features. At 28, he was the ghost in the machine of his father's empire, a hacker prodigy who shunned the boardrooms and backroom deals that defined the Moretti family. The old man, Vincent Moretti, ruled Chicago's underworld with an iron fist wrapped in velvet. Shipping manifests that hid more than cargo, discreet ledgers balancing favors and threats. Luca preferred code to guns, algorithms to alibis. Women. They were distractions, pawns in a game he refused to play. His father had paraded eligible daughters from rival families before him, all met with cold rejection. "I'm not marrying into chains," he'd snapped more than once. But tonight, Luca's custom intrusion detection system pinged. An unauthorized probe, elegant, precise, slipping past his decoys like a shadow. He leaned forward, tracing the signal through proxies. Not a rival crew, too clean for that. A freelancer? His lips curved in a rare smile. Intrigued, he fed her a breadcrumb. A false vulnerability leading to a secure chat window. "Impressive work," he typed. "But you're in deeper than you think." Elena's heart skipped as the chat popped up. She glanced around the cafe, the patter of rain on windows suddenly ominous. Who was this? Her cursor hovered. "Just doing my job," she replied, keeping it vague. Vuln confirmed. "Sending report." "Report to me first," came the instant response. "Name's Luca. Meet me. Coffee on me, if you can find the spot." She should log off, delete the session, walk away. But the payout was double what she'd expected, and Marco's school fees loomed like storm clouds. Curiosity, that old foe, tugged at her. "Where?" she typed, against her better judgment. The address led her to a nondescript diner off Michigan Avenue, the kind with vinyl booths cracked from years of secrets whispered over pie. The air inside was thick with the sizzle of grease and the murmur of late-night patrons. Cops off shift. Insomniacs nursing mugs. Elena spotted him immediately. Tall, lean, with ink-black hair falling over piercing blue eyes, dressed in a simple black hoodie that did nothing to hide the tension in his shoulders. He sat alone, a laptop open but untouched, watching the door like he owned the shadows. "You're Elena," Luca said as she approached, his voice low, accented faintly with the city's edge. He didn't stand, but his gaze assessed her. Not predatory, but calculating, like scanning code for flaws. She nodded, sliding into the booth opposite him. The vinyl creaked under her. Up close, he was younger than she'd imagined, but there was a weight to him, a guarded intensity. "And you're the client? This feels off script." He chuckled, a dry sound. "Scripts are for amateurs. You breached my decoy in under 10 minutes. That's not freelance level." He pushed a coffee her way, black, steaming. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting flickering shadows on the checkered floor. Elena wrapped her hands around the mug, the warmth seeping into her chilled fingers. "I don't breach. I audit. If you're Vincent Moretti's tech guy, I want no part of that world." The name slipped out. She'd pieced it together from the network signatures. Moretti. The name alone carried the chill of rumors. Docs controlled, politicians in pockets, a family code that bent rules but never broke innocence. Luca's expression tightened, just a fraction. "My father's world, not mine." He leaned in, voice dropping. "But someone's sniffing around our ledgers. Subtle. Burner phones routing through offshore servers. Guard rotations leaked. You any good at tracing that?" Her pulse quickened. This wasn't a job anymore. It was a door cracking open to something dangerous. Marco's face flashed in her mind, his laughter in their cramped kitchen, oblivious to her late nights. "I'm a mom, not a spy." "Why me?" "Because you're good. And because—" He paused, eyes locking on hers. "You remind me of someone who doesn't play games." The words hung between them, charged like the storm outside. Elena felt the pull, autonomy warring with the spark of connection, the first in years. But as thunder rumbled, shaking the diner's windows, she noticed the man at the counter lingering too long, his phone angled just so. Surveillance? Or paranoia? Luca followed her gaze, his hand drifting under the table. Toward what? She couldn't see. "We should go," he murmured. "Now." As they stepped into the rain-lashed night, the diner's door swung shut behind them, but Elena couldn't shake the feeling that eyes followed. Who was really watching? And what had she just stepped into? The rain hammered down on Michigan Avenue like a relentless drumbeat, turning the sidewalks into slick mirrors that reflected the blurred neon of passing cabs. Elena pulled her hood up, the fabric heavy with water, as Luca guided her toward a black SUV idling at the curb. Its engine hummed low, almost swallowed by the storm, and the tinted windows gleamed like obsidian under the street lamps. No plates visible from this angle, just a subtle antenna on the roof, the kind that whispered high-tech surveillance. She hesitated, her hand brushing the door handle, the chill of the metal seeping through her glove. "Get in," Luca said, his voice cutting through the downpour without raising. He scanned the street, eyes narrowing at a delivery van parked too casually across the way, its wipers slapping rhythmically. That guy's not delivering pizzas. Elena slid into the passenger seat, the leather creaking as it molded to her damp coat. The interior smelled of polished wood and faint cologne, clean, controlled, a far cry from the greasy haze of the diner. Luca climbed in the driver's side, water dripping from his hair onto the collar of his hoodie. He didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he pulled out a slim device from the center console, a burner phone with a cracked screen, and tapped a quick sequence. The SUV's dashboard lit up with a soft glow, cameras activating, rear view feeds, blind spots, even a thermal scan overlay flickering to life. "You're serious about this," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Marco was with the sitter tonight, safe in their apartment, but the thought of him grounded her like an anchor in choppy waters. Who are they? Rivals? Cops? Luca's fingers flew over the phone, sending an encrypted ping. Could be anyone sniffing for weakness. My father's got enemies. Old grudges from the docks, new ones from the high-rises. That probe you audited? It wasn't random. Someone's after the ledgers, the kind that tracks shipments without the feds asking questions. He glanced at her, his blue eyes sharp in the dim cabin light. You saw the back door, sloppy on purpose, maybe to lure in talent like you. The engine roared to life, smooth and powerful, as he pulled into traffic. The wipers swished in steady arcs, blurring the world outside into streaks of red taillights and rain-smeared signs. Elena watched the side mirror, catching a glimpse of the delivery van easing into the flow behind them, 2 cars back. Paranoia or real? Her coder's mind raced, piecing together the anomalies. The anonymous client email routed through Tor, the network signatures tied to Moretti shipping manifests, cargo logs that hid everything from contraband to legitimate imports, balanced by discreet favors and shadowed accounts. Why drag me into this? She pressed, twisting in her seat to face him. The SUV's heater blasted warm air, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked asphalt clinging to their clothes. I'm not your fixer. I've got a kid. A life that doesn't involve burner phones and tailing vans. Luca's jaw tightened, the sodium lights from passing buildings carving shadows across his face. He merged onto the Dan Ryan Expressway, the city skyline receding like a fading dream. Because you're clean. No ties, no history in this mess. And that audit you ran? It flagged a ghost account, transfers to an offshore shell, timed with guard shifts at the warehouses. I need eyes like yours. Not some crew hack who reports to the old man. She let out a short laugh, bitter as the coffee cooling in her veins. Clean? Try surviving on freelance scraps while raising a boy alone. My husband's accident left us with nothing but bills and questions the cops couldn't answer. The words slipped out, rawer than intended, the expressway's rumble underscoring the vulnerability. Luca's glance softened, just a flicker, before his focus snapped back to the road. The van was still there, weaving through lanes with practiced ease. Luca muttered under his breath, activating the dash's navigation. Not the standard GPS, but a custom overlay with real-time traffic cams hacked into the city's feed. See that? Plate's a fake. Switched at a chop shop, probably. They're not pros, but persistent. He accelerated, the SUV surging forward, tires hissing on wet pavement. Elena's heart pounded in sync with the storm, the distant wail of sirens blending with the radio's static hum. Security chatter, she realized, from his earpiece. They exited toward the industrial sprawl south of the Loop, where the Chicago River snaked through forgotten yards, its waters black and churning under iron bridges. Warehouses loomed like silent sentinels, sodium lamps casting long pools of yellow on graffiti-scarred walls. The air grew thicker with the metallic tang of rust and diesel as Luca pulled into a gated lot, the chain-link fence rattling as it swung open on automated tracks. No guards visible, but cameras dotted the perimeter, their red eyes unblinking. Inside the largest building, the space opened into a cavern of stacked crates and conveyor shadows, the echo of dripping water from a leaky roof punctuating the quiet. Luca killed the engine, the sudden silence pressing in like a held breath. This is one of the safe houses, off the books, even from my father. He led her to a side office, the door beeping open with a retinal scan. Tech she recognized, biometric layers she'd audited in corporate gigs. The room was sparse, a bank of monitors on a metal desk, glowing with code streams and ledger excerpts. A cot in the corner, unfolded like an afterthought, the faint buzz of generators from below. Elena's eyes scanned the screens, shipping manifests scrolling by, highlighted entries for anomalous routes. A container from Rotterdam, delayed by weather, but flagged with a burner phone trace leading to a P.O. box in Milwaukee. "Look," Luca said, pulling up a chair for her. His shoulder brushed hers as he leaned in, the contact electric in the confined space. "That ghost account. It's pulling data on guard rotations, times when the docks are lightest. If it's a rival like the Rossi crew, they're prepping a hit on a shipment. Innocents don't get hurt in our code, but leaks like this, they unravel everything." She typed a query, her fingers flying, cross-referencing IP logs from her earlier audit. A hit. The probe originated from a coffee shop in Wrigleyville, but bounced through a VPN tied to a known Rossi associate, a driver with a rap sheet for smuggling. "It's them," she whispered, the screen's glow illuminating the tension in her face. "But why now? What's in that container worth the risk?" Luca's hand rested on the desk, inches from hers, his voice low. "Family legacy. Artifacts from the old country, smuggled out during the wars. Valuable, but more than that, proof of alliances that keep the peace." He met her gaze, the air between them thick with unspoken stakes. Possessiveness flickered in his eyes, not the crude claim of power, but a quiet vow, shaped by losses he didn't name. Her independence recoiled, yet the pull was there, a thread weaving through the danger. A sharp ping shattered the moment, an alert on the monitors. The van signal, closing in, its path looping toward the warehouse district. Outside, thunder cracked, and the lights flickered, the storm's fury mirroring the rising unease. Elena stood, peering through a reinforced window at the rain-lashed yard. Shadows moved, footsteps splashing, a figure detaching from the fence line. "They're here," Luca said, grabbing a compact tablet, its screen mapping escape routes through the tunnels beneath. "We trace this back, or we run. Your call." But as the first muffled thud echoed from the loading dock, metal on metal, deliberate, Elena wondered if running was even an option anymore. What if the real leak was closer than they thought? The warehouse's loading dock reverberated with the thud, a metallic echo that cut through the storm's roar like a warning shot. Elena froze by the window, her breath fogging the reinforced glass, the rain outside blurring the yard into a watercolor of shadows and sodium light. The figure she'd glimpsed was no illusion. Two now, moving low between stacked pallets, their dark silhouettes cutting through puddles that splashed like muffled footsteps. The air inside the office hung heavy with the scent of damp concrete and ozone from the flickering monitors, the generator's hum rising to a strained whine. Luca was already at the desk, his fingers dancing over the tablet, pulling up schematics of the underground tunnels snaking beneath the industrial sprawl. Two hostiles, armed light, pistols, maybe suppressors from the sound profile, he murmured, his voice steady, but edged with the clipped efficiency of someone who'd run this simulation in code 100 times. The tablet's screen cast a blue pallor on his face, highlighting the scar along his jawline, a faint reminder of a past scrape he never mentioned. Rossi scouts, testing the perimeter. If they're here, the van's a decoy, real teams circling the block. Elena's mind raced, her coder's instincts kicking in despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. She grabbed the keyboard, cross-referencing the alert data with the city's traffic cams. Hacked feeds Luca had already primed. A third vehicle, a nondescript sedan, idled at the district's edge, its engine signature matching the van's make. "They're boxing us in," she said, her voice low, fingers blurring as she isolated a signal. Burner phone ping. It's routing through a repeater in that sedan. Coordinates match a Rossi safe house in Bridgeport. They're not just probing. They've got eyes on the manifests we just pulled. He nodded, not looking up, his focus laser sharp. The pull between them sharpened in the crisis, his possessiveness a quiet undercurrent. Not in demands, but in the way he positioned himself between her and the door, shielding without smothering. Elena felt her autonomy strain against it, The single mom's resolve that had carried her through grief and lean months now clashing with the vulnerability of relying on this stranger from a world of shadows. "We can't stay," she said firmly. "Tunnels lead to the river access. I know the layout, old freight lines from my freelance audits on the Port Authority." Luca's eyes met hers, a flicker of respect breaking through the tension. "Smart, but it's a gauntlet. Flooded sections from the rain, motion sensors we can loop, but if they breach the dock..." He trailed off as another thud echoed, closer, followed by the scrape of a crate shifting. The lights dipped again. The blackout. A natural storm quirk or something tampered. Hard to tell with the wind howling through vents like a distant siren. He handed her a compact earpiece, its wire thin and unobtrusive. "Sync to my channel. Stay 3 paces behind. Eyes on the flanks." No argument, just the code of his world. Protect the innocent, even if it meant dragging her deeper. Elena clipped it in, the device humming to life with a soft static. Marco's face flashing in her mind. A reminder of the life waiting beyond this concrete maze. Loyalty to her son warred with the spark of trust building here, fragile as the encrypted links she'd traced. They slipped out the office door, the corridor's fluorescent strips buzzing erratically overhead, casting jittery shadows on rusted pipes and forgotten forklifts. The warehouse's vastness swallowed their steps, the air thick with the briny tang of the nearby river seeping through cracks in the foundation. Luca led the way to a grated hatch in the floor, its lock yielding to a quick RFID tap from his tablet. As the cover lifted with a hydraulic hiss, cool, musty air rushed up, dank earth and stagnant water, the tunnel's breath. "Go," he whispered, gesturing her down the metal ladder. Elena descended first, her boots splashing into ankle-deep water that chilled through her jeans, the current tugging gently from some unseen source. The walls were slick concrete, etched with decades of graffiti and the faint hum of embedded conduits. Old power lines, now conduits for the Moretti's off-grid network. Her earpiece crackled. Clear ahead. Watch for the junction. Left to the docks, right to the river. She nodded into the gloom, phone flashlight cutting a narrow beam that danced on dripping stalactites of rust. Behind her, Luca sealed the hatch, the sound muffled but final. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them close, their breaths sinking in the confined space. "Why you?" she asked suddenly, the words escaping as they waded forward, the water rising to her calves. "Rejecting all those alliances your father pushes. Women from the families, power plays. What's the code that keeps you out?" He paused at the junction, water lapping at his knees, the storm's rumble vibrating through the stone. His profile was etched in the faint glow from his tablet, eyes distant for a beat. "Lost my mother young. To a rival's crossfire, a deal gone south. Father swore the code. No innocence, no chains through marriage. I code to keep it clean. Algorithms over blood. Women? They're leverage in his game. Until..." He glanced back, the words hanging, charged. "Someone like you. Real. No agenda. Makes me question the isolation." Elena's chest tightened, the confession pulling at her guarded heart. Her own loss echoed his, the accident that took her husband a veil of unanswered questions. Cops dismissing it as drunk driving despite the skid marks that didn't add up. Trust versus suspicion roiled within her, but the moment shattered as her earpiece buzzed. "Contact! Rear!" "They're in." A distant splash echoed from the tunnel behind, footsteps sloshing purposefully. Luca grabbed her arm, propelling them right toward the river access, the water deepening to waist level, cold shock biting through fabric. They emerged into a wider chamber, the Chicago River's murmur audible through a barred grate ahead, moonlight fracturing on the surface beyond. But the grate was padlocked, chain glinting wetly, no RFID here. "Damn!" Luca hissed, pulling a multi-tool from his pocket, working the lock with practiced twists. Elena scanned the chamber, spotting a ledge above, maintenance access, wired with old alarms. Her fingers itched for code. She splashed to a junction box, prying it open to reveal frayed wires. I can loop it. 30 seconds. As she spliced, sparks flying in the dim light, the footsteps grew louder, shadows lengthening on the walls. A voice filtered through, muffled Italian curses, Rossi confirming the trace. Luca finished the lock, grate creaking open, but a muffled pop echoed, suppressed shot ricocheting off stone, close enough to spray water. Down! He tackled her into the shallows, the impact jarring, water closing over them in a frigid embrace. They surfaced, gasping, the grate their only exit. Elena's splice held, the alarm silent, but the pursuers were at the chamber's mouth now, flashlights sweeping like searchlights. Luca fired back once, the unsuppressed crack deafening in the tunnel, buying seconds as the men ducked. Through. Now. He pushed her ahead, the river's chill air hitting like freedom as they squeezed out, emerging on a muddy riverbank under the bridge's iron skeleton. The storm lashed them, rain stinging like needles, but they ran, lungs burning toward a waiting speedboat bobbing in the shallows, Luca's contingency, engine idling low. As they motored into the black current, the warehouse receding like a bad dream. Elena's earpiece crackled with an incoming trace, the burner's final ping, revealing a deeper anomaly. Not just Rossi, the ghost account led back to an internal IP, someone in the Moretti fold. A turncoat? Her pulse thrummed with the boat's wake. Who inside Vincent's empire had sold them out, and how close was the boss to learning her name? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The speedboat sliced through the Chicago River's churning black waters, its engine a low growl muffled by the storm's relentless fury. Rain pelted the fiberglass hull like scattered gunfire, and Elena huddled under a tarp in the bow, her soaked clothes clinging cold and heavy, the metallic tang of river spray mixing with the diesel exhaust. Luca gripped the wheel at the stern, his hoodie plastered to his frame, eyes fixed on the GPS overlay flickering on his waterproof tablet. The city's skyline loomed distant now, a jagged silhouette against lightning-veined clouds, bridges arching like skeletal guardians overhead. The riverbank blurred past, abandoned rail yards choked with weeds, the faint sodium glow of distant warehouses winking through the downpour. Elena's teeth chattered, not just from the chill, but from the adrenaline crash settling in her bones. The escape had been too close, the suppressed shots echoing in her ears like accusations. Marco, safe with the sitter, texting her goodnight hours ago. But the thought of him pulled her back from the edge. She glanced at Luca, his profile taut, water streaming from his dark hair. That confession in the tunnel lingered, a crack in his armored isolation, stirring her own guarded heart. Yet autonomy burned fierce. She wasn't some damsel coding for a savior. That internal IP, she said over the engine's thrum, her voice steady despite the shiver. It's not a fluke. Timestamp matches a server in the Blackstone Tower, your father's penthouse network. Luca's jaw clenched, the boat banking sharply around a buoy, waves slapping against the sides. I know. Ghost account's been dormant for months, but it woke up right after your audit. Someone close. Accountant, maybe a guard with access codes. He adjusted course, aiming for a concealed inlet beneath the Halsted Street Bridge, where the river widened into a shadowed cove, flanked by concrete pilings overgrown with ivy. The air here carried the rot of low tide, mudflats exposed by the storm's ebb, and the distant hum of traffic above like an indifferent world. We dock, regroup. Can't risk the SUV. They'll have plates circulated by now. The boat nudged into the shallows with a gravelly scrape, and they scrambled ashore, boots sinking into muck that sucked at their steps. Luca secured the line to a rusted cleat hidden in the undergrowth, then led her up a steep embankment, hand brushing hers briefly. Protective, not possessive, though the line blurred in the dark. At the top, a chain-link fence sagged under vines, and beyond it, a narrow service road wound toward an old cannery converted into luxury lofts. No overt security, but Elena spotted the tells, a camera lens glinting in the foliage, its pivot silent, and a faint whir from a drone hovering upstream, rain beating on its props. Inside the cannery's ground floor, a renovated safe house disguised as artist studios, the space unfolded into exposed brick and industrial beams, the air warm with the scent of fresh plaster and brewing coffee from an automated machine. Dim track lighting cast pools of amber on leather couches and a wall of screens, currently dark. Luca locked the door behind them, triple bolt sliding home, and tossed her a towel from a linen closet. "Dry off. We've got dry clothes in the back." He moved to the console, booting the system with a biometric scan, his movements efficient, betraying the weight of the night's revelations. Elena peeled off her wet jacket, the fabric slapping wetly on the tile floor, and wrapped the towel around her shoulders. The warmth seeped in slowly, but her mind raced ahead, pulling up a mental ledger of clues. The Rossi probe, the internal betrayal, Luca's code clashing with his father's empire. She joined him at the screens, where data streams bloomed, shipping manifests cross-referenced with burner traces, a digital map pulsing with red alerts around the warehouse district. "Look here," she pointed, her finger tracing a line on the display. The ghost account accessed a discrete ledger last week, transfers to that Milwaukee P.O. box but routed through an employee VPN. Guard rotation leaks timed with it. If it's internal, Vincent's code is cracking from within. Luca leaned closer, their shoulders touching in the tight space, the heat of him a contrast to the river's chill. His blue eyes scanned the code, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his face. The son rejecting the throne, yet bound by legacy. Father's rule, loyalty or exile. But losses pile up. Mother's death taught him that. And me. He paused, voice dropping. I rejected those women because they're extensions of power. Marriages to seal alliances, not build something real. You're outside it. A single mom fighting alone. No games. It pulls at me, Elena. Makes me want to protect what's mine without chaining it. The words hung heavy, stirring conflict in her chest. His possessiveness a velvet glove over steel, her independence a shield forged in widowhood's fire. She stepped back, towel clutched tight. I'm not yours to protect, Luca. Marco and I built our life without your world. Curiosity got me here, but ethics draw the line. If tracing this exposes innocence, like warehouse crews or my son, I'm out. Fear laced her resolve. Loyalty to her boy versus the intrigue of trust, the spark between them testing boundaries like a firewall under siege. A soft chime interrupted, the drone feed activating, showing the river cove clear but a black sedan cruising the service road, headlights cutting through rain like search beams. Luca's hand hovered near a concealed panel, revealing a row of monitors linking to the family's network. They're closing in. Partial trace. The internal IP belongs to Marco Rossi, no relation to the crew, but a mid-level accountant in father's books. Hired 6 months ago, clean resume. But behavioral tell, late-night logins, patterns matching the leaks. Elena's pulse spiked. Marco, like my son. Coincidence or something deeper? She shook it off, focusing on the screen. We need access codes to his workstation. If we hack it quietly... The building's lights flickered, a blackout rippling through the lofts like a staged diversion, the storm outside masking any tampering. In the sudden dark, the coffee machine gurgled to a stop, and a distant thud echoed from the alley. Footsteps? Or imagination? Luca's voice cut the gloom, calm, but urgent. Power's jury-rigged. Back up in 10. Stay put. But as the emergency lights hummed to life, casting red shadows on the brick, Elena's phone buzzed in her discarded jacket. A withheld number, text blinking. Vasquez. We know the boy. Walk away. Or the river takes two. Her blood ran cold. How did they have her name? And what if the boss, Vincent, was next to learn it, shocked by the single mom's ties to his son's secrets? The emergency lights bathed the cannery loft in a crimson haze, turning the exposed brick walls into bleeding canvases and casting elongated shadows that danced like intruders across the floor. Elena's phone screen glowed accusingly from her jacket pocket, the withheld text searing into her retinas. Vasquez. We know the boy. Walk away, or the river takes two. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the device, the chill from her damp clothes seeping deeper than the river's bite. The air hung stale now, laced with the faint ozone of the backup generators kicking in below, their rumble vibrating through the concrete like a distant heartbeat. Marco, his name in the message twisted like a knife. Coincidence or calculated cruelty? Luca was at her side in an instant, his silhouette materializing from the gloom, eyes narrowing as he read over her shoulder. The warmth of his proximity clashed with the threat's ice, his hand steadying her arm without demand. A touch that spoke of protection forged in code and loss, yet it grated against her fierce independence. They've got your name. How? His voice was a low thread, urgent but controlled, the storm's muffled thunder underscoring the words like an ominous underscore. Elena pulled away, pocketing the phone, her mind a whirlwind of algorithms and alarms. The loft screens flickered back to life one by one, data streams resuming their crawl, ledger entries pulsing with red flags, the internal IP trace looping back to Marco Rossi's workstation in the Blackstone Tower. No relation to her son, she reminded herself, but the echo unnerved her. The audit I ran for you, my IP was masked, but if they intercepted the breadcrumb you fed me. She trailed off, crossing to the console, her boots leaving wet prints on the polished concrete. The scent of cooling electronics mingled with the faint, acrid bite of her fear sweat. Or the diner. That man at the counter, phone angled. Facial rec could have pulled my plate from traffic cams. Luca nodded, pulling up a secondary feed. Citywide surveillance hacked into the CPD's non-emergency grid, timestamps aligning with their escape. A grainy still captured the delivery van's driver, face blurred by rain, but matched to a Rossi low-level operative, petty theft record, known for tailing freelancers sniffing too close to family businesses. Sloppy work on their end, but effective. The text came from a burner, routed through a tower near Pilsen. Your neighborhood. His blue eyes met hers, shadowed with a possessiveness that wasn't brute force but a quiet claim, born of his code. Safeguard the unguarded, even if it meant upending his isolation. We trace it now, or they escalate. Your boy's sitter, reliable? Ms. Rivera, across the hall. She's texting me check-ins. Elena's voice cracked slightly, loyalty to Marco a fire walling off vulnerability. She'd raised him alone after the accident, piecing together a life from code scraps and unyielding ethics. No shadows, no debts. Yet here she was, entangled in Luca's world, the pull of his sincerity testing her boundaries like a buffer overflow. I call her, confirm, but if Vincent learns my name, ties me to you, he'll see a liability. A single mom with a kid. That's not alliance material. It's a weak link. The generators steadied, full light snapping on with a harsh buzz, illuminating the loft's stark minimalism. A kitchenette with gleaming counters, untouched takeout containers from Luca's solitary nights, and a wall safe humming faintly behind a false panel. He moved to it, thumbprint unlocking the door to reveal a stack of clean passports, cash bundles, and a sleek laptop. Contingencies for a life coded in evasion. Father's code binds him. No innocence harmed, vows to the family first. But he's old school, sees threats in everything. If he traces the ghost account to me pulling in an outsider. Luca's words hung, his past loss a ghost in the room, the mother's death that shaped his rejections of power's chains. Ambition versus prudence warred in him, trust in her clashing with suspicion of the Empire's rot. Elena dialed the sitter, the ringtone piercing the tension like a glitch. "All good here, Elena." Marco's out like a light, storms lulling him. Relief flooded her, but it was fleeting. The call dropped mid-sentence, signal bars vanishing. "Jammed," she whispered, glancing at the windows, rain-lashed panes overlooking the service road, where the black sedan's headlights now idled, engine purring like a predator. They're close, blocking cell towers with a portable jammer, common tech for crews like Rossi, van-mounted. Luca's tablet chimed, the drone feed showing 2 figures exiting the sedan, raincoats slick, one carrying a slim case, likely signal disruptors or worse. Infiltration play. They think we're pinned. He grabbed the laptop, syncing it to the console, fingers flying to isolate Rossi's workstation access. The screen bloomed with encrypted files, discrete ledgers detailing shipments of antiques from Europe, smuggled heirlooms masking laundered funds, timed with guard rotations leaked via the ghost account. A behavioral tell popped, late-night emails from Marco Rossi to an offshore contact, inconsistencies in his cover. Hired post of family favor, but IP logs showed pre-employment probes into Moretti rivals. "Got it," Elena murmured, leaning in, their breaths mingling in the charged air. The discovery hit like a partial decrypt. Rossi the accountant wasn't just leaking, he was planting false trails, framing Luca's audits as the breach. He's covering for a bigger player, maybe inside Vincent's inner circle. See the timestamps? Aligns with your father's last council meeting. Betrayal from the top down. The loft's door rattled suddenly. A deliberate knock, muffled voices filtering through. Maintenance. Storm damage reported. False alarm, or the environment turning hostile? The rain intensified, drumming on the roof like fingers tapping codes, a blackout threat lingering in the flickering bulbs. Luca's hand found hers, squeezing once. Symbolic, a pledge amid the chaos, loyalty over raw power. But Elena pulled back, autonomy surging. We confront this head-on. Hack his comms. Feed him bad data. Make him slip. As she initiated the script, the door's lock clicked, tampered, the bolts yielding under skilled picks. Shadows spilled in from the hallway, the intruder's footsteps splashing in the vestibule. Luca doused the lights manually, plunging them into red-tinged dark, the safe house's defenses activating, silent alarms pinging to his father's network. But in the blackout's hush, Elena's phone buzzed again. Another text. Boy's address confirmed. Last warning. Her heart seized. How deep did the turncoats' reach go? And would Vincent's shock at her identity seal their fates before the code could save them? The loft plunged into a crimson void as Luca killed the power manually, the emergency strips fading to a pulse that barely pierced the shadows. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears, syncing with the rain's savage tattoo on the roof, the air thickening with the metallic bite of fear and the faint oily residue of the jammed door's hinges. Footsteps scraped in the vestibule. 2 sets, deliberate, boots squelching on the wet threshold, accompanied by the low murmur of Italian clipped short. The intruder's flashlight beams sliced through the dark like knives, probing the brick arches and leather furniture, catching glints off the console's dormant screens. Elena crouched behind the kitchenette island, her back pressed to cool granite, the second text burning in her pocket like a live wire. Marco's address confirmed. The river's distant lap mocked her, a reminder of how far she'd waded into this current. Luca melted into the gloom beside the safe's panel, his breath even, body coiled like a script waiting to execute. The tablet in his hand glowed faintly under his jacket, feeding silent data to the family's encrypted network. Alarms triggered, but no cavalry. Vincent's code demanded discretion. No sirens that could draw feds or rivals en masse. 2, he whispered into the earpiece, voice a thread of steel. Case is a jammer rig. Disrupt and grab. Stay low. his protectiveness wrapped around her like the shadows, not a cage but a shield, forged from his isolation's end, rejecting alliances for something real, her. Yet Elena's independence flared, hot and unyielding. She'd coded her way out of worse binds alone, Marco's safety her unbreachable ethic. No damsel, no debt. The first beam swept the room, illuminating takeout wrappers like scattered clues. The coffee machine's drip a traitor in the hush. "Clear left," one intruder grunted, his accent thick with Rossi edges, the beam swinging toward the console. Elena's mind raced, piecing logistics. The turncoat Marco Rossi's leaks had mapped this safe house, guard rotations bypassed via the ghost account. Institutional limits, Vincent's empire too vast for total lockdown, left cracks for human error, like hiring a mole under a clean resume. She edged her hand toward the laptop, fingers brushing keys in the dark, initiating a ghost trace on the intruder's comms. A soft ping in her earpiece, their burner linked to the accountant's workstation, confirming the betrayal's depth. "Check the back," the second voice hissed, footsteps advancing, the case clunking against a beam. Luca moved like smoke, slipping behind a partition, his multi-tool now a slim blade in the red light. Elena's splice held, the loft's secondary power looped, buying seconds. But the storm outside howled, wind rattling windows like a jammed exit, turning the haven hazardous. A beam caught her jacket's edge, and she froze, heart slamming. The pull between them intensified in the crisis, his loyalty a vow against his father's chains, her fear for Marco testing trust versus flight. "Luca," she breathed, barely audible. "Feed them the false data." Rossi framed as the leak. He didn't respond, but the tablet's script deployed silently, flooding the intruder's potential scanners with dummy manifests. Shipments rerouted to phantom docks, guard shifts inverted. The lead man paused, pulling a device from his coat, its screen flickering. "Signal's glitching. Boss said the place is wired tight." His partner cursed, beam darting erratically, close enough now to smell the rain on their coats, mixed with cheap tobacco. Elena's phone vibrated again. Another text withheld. "Time's up. Kids' route to school mapped." Rage coiled in her gut, autonomy clashing with the terror of exposure. Vincent learning her name would shock him, a single mom outsider breaching his son's walls. But at what cost to her world? Luca struck then, a shadow uncoiling. He lunged from the partition, blade flashing, not to kill, but to sever the jammer's antenna with a precise slice, the device sparking in the beam's glare. The man yelped, swinging a suppressed pistol, the muffled pop whizzing past Elena's ear into the brick, chips raining like confetti. She dove, rolling behind the couch, the impact jarring her elbow on the concrete. Chaos erupted. The second intruder fired blindly, bullets thudding into furniture, stuffing exploding in white puffs that danced in the beams like ghosts. Luca grappled the first, a low grunt escaping as fists connected. Flesh on flesh, no graphic spray, just the thud of restrained fury under his code. Elena scrambled to the console, hands flying over keys in the fray, her trace deepening. Marco Rossi's emails revealed a sponsor, Vincent's consigliere, Uncle Gino, the old fox with grudges from a botched alliance years back. Betrayal from the inner circle, leaking to Rossi crew for a power grab. Innocents like warehouse loaders at risk in the crossfire. The script uploaded evidence to Luca's secure drop, but the fight spilled closer. Luca taking a glancing blow to the ribs, breath hitching, yet he disarmed the shooter with a knee to the wrist, pistol skittering across the floor. "Enough!" Elena shouted, flipping the loft's hidden strobe, a security diversion, blinding flashes erupting like a staged fire's glare, disorienting the men. They staggered, cursing, one clutching eyes while the other groped for the door. Luca seized the moment, tackling them back into the vestibule, the door slamming shut behind him with a bolt's finality. Silence fell, broken only by his ragged breaths and the rain's diminuendo. He re-entered, bruised but unbowed, a shallow cut on his knuckles the only mark, wiping it on his shirt. You okay? He asked, crossing to her, eyes searching, not possessive demand, but a quiet anchor in the storm's wake. The loft reeked of cordite and sweat, screens humming back to full life, the trace complete. Gino's access codes embedded in the ghost account, timed with council meetings. Vincent's shock loomed, his trusted advisor turning coat. Elena's role the key that unlocked it. She nodded, standing on shaky legs, the human conflict raw. His world tempted with protection, a future beyond isolation. But her ethics demanded autonomy, Marco's safety non-negotiable. Gino's the mole, evidence sent to your father's secure line. But they know my name. Your father's next. When he learns I'm the single mom pulling your strings. She trailed off. The revelations cost heavy. Exposure, sacrifice, yet a trust forged in the dark. Luca's hand hovered near hers, the air electric with unspoken pledges. He'll see the code in it, loyalty over blood. But if Rossi escalates... Outside, sirens wailed distant, the storm breaking, but a new ping on the console. Vincent's direct line activating, incoming call. The boss had learned her identity, shocked and demanding answers. Would the family code save them, or fracture everything in the light of dawn? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The first hints of dawn filtered through the loft's rain-streaked windows, turning the crimson emergency glow into a bruised purple haze that clung to the exposed beams like regret. Elena stood frozen by the console, the screen's soft hum a counterpoint to the storm's fading growl outside, where puddles on the service road mirrored the city's awakening in fractured silver. The incoming call icon pulsed insistently on the main display, Vincent Moretti's private line, encrypted with layers she'd audited in nightmares. Her damp clothes had dried into stiff discomfort, the faint scent of cordite lingering like a bad omen, mingling with the bitter aftertaste of adrenaline. Luca hovered nearby, his bruised knuckles flexing unconsciously, the cut scabbed over but his blue eyes sharp, weighing the legacy that bound him. Father's iron code against the fractures he'd just exposed. Answer it, Elena said, her voice steady despite the knot twisting in her gut. Autonomy had carried her this far, through widowhood's isolation, Marco's fevers, freelance gigs that paid in scraps, but now suspicion warred with the trust she'd glimpsed in Luca's confessions. His world tempted with shields she'd never asked for, yet possessiveness simmered beneath, a quiet claim that chafed her independence like wet leather on skin. She crossed her arms, the loft's chill seeping through the brick, carrying the distant tang of river mud from their escape. Luca tapped the screen, the connection blooming with a soft chime. Vincent's face filled the feed, etched lines deepening under the penthouse's harsh fluorescence, his silver hair slicked back, eyes like chipped flint. Behind him, the Blackstone Tower's skyline view stretched endless, a kingdom of glass and secrets. Luca, explain the alarms. And this, Vasquez, a single mother, hacking my ledgers? His voice rumbled low, accented with the old country's gravel, no shout but the weight of authority that bent men without breaking them. The camera angle caught a subtle tell. His hand gripping a ledger, pages worn from years of discreet balances, favors owed, threats tallied. Luca straightened, the partition's shadow playing across his face, his rejection of alliances a silent defiance in the tilt of his chin. Father, it's contained. The ghost account, it's Gino, leaks to Rossi crew, framing my audits. Elena audited the breach. She's clean, no ties. He glanced at her, a flicker of vulnerability, the sun bridging isolation for something real, loyalty tested by the Empire's rot. But Vincent's gaze shifted to Elena, assessing, shocked silence stretching like a taut wire. She'd pierced his world not as a pawn, but an outsider with a child's life at stake, her ethics a mirror to his code. Protect the innocents, even if it meant upending the board. Elena's pulse thrummed, the console's warmth under her palms grounding her. Mr. Moretti, I audited a freelance job. Vulnerabilities in your network, backdoors, sloppy invites. But the threats? Burner traces to your inner circle. Your son's code held. Mine just followed the data. Tight words, high tension, revealing the investigative thread without surrender. The air in the loft thickened, the generator's hum fading as full power stabilized, lights buzzing to life and casting stark relief on the scuffed floor where the intruders had fallen. Vincent leaned forward, the penthouse's leather creak audible through the feed, his expression cracking with rare surprise. The magnate who'd lost a wife to crossfire, vowing no more innocence in the crosshairs. A widow with a boy. My sources confirm. Accident 4 years back. Questions the cops buried. And now, entangled with my son who rejects every alliance I offer. Shock laced his tone, not rage, but a dawning realization. Elena's pull on Luca echoed his own buried grief. A single mom's resilience challenging the family's chains. Gino. Proof. Luca uploaded the trace. Emails, IP logs, access codes embedded like digital fingerprints. Vincent scanned them, his face hardening, the ledger forgotten in his fist. The consigliere, old grudge from the war, thought it buried. Rossi's using him for a warehouse hit tonight. Docks at midnight. Shipments exposed. Crews at risk. The revelation hung, partial but damning. Betrayal organized. Human error in hiring the fox to guard the henhouse. Vincent's code surged. Legacy restrained. Vows to protect the fold. But ambition versus prudence flickered in his eyes. The cost of purge looming. Exposure to feds. Rival fractures. Elena interjected, her voice cutting the feed static. They know my son's address. Texts from jammed burners. If Gino's reach extends... Fear for Marco clawed at her. Loyalty a fierce barrier. The pull-push of Luca's world testing her ethics. He stepped closer, his presence a steady hum, not overtaking but aligning. The spark between them a found thread in the chaos. Vincent's nod was curt. The magnate's mask slipping to reveal the father's weariness. Code holds. No innocence. Get to the safe house on Fullerton. Armored, off-grid. I'll call the council. Excise the rot. But you, Vasquez, stay with Luca. The boy's protected now. The line cut, leaving the loft in echoing quiet. The dawn's light strengthening, gilding the screens with gold. Protection offered, but at the price of autonomy. Elena's life no longer solitary, woven into Moretti vows. Luca turned to her, the bruise on his ribs shadowing his breath. He sees it. Your strength, like mother's. No chains, just alliance on our terms. His hand brushed hers, symbolic, a pledge amid the unraveling, trust over suspicion, bonds forged in betrayal's fire. But Elena pulled back slightly, conflict raw. Gratitude warring with the fear of entanglement, Marco's world colliding with shadows. A sharp ping shattered the moment. Console alert, drone feed showing a convoy approaching the service road. Rossi vans, 3 strong, headlights piercing the morning mist like advancing threats. Gino's escalation. The hit moved up, infiltration via the turncoat's leaks. The loft's doors rattled faintly, jammed signals flickering back online. They're coming for the evidence, Luca said, grabbing the laptop, escape routes mapping on his tablet. Tunnels to the L train, or a rooftop extraction under the rising sun. Elena nodded, resolve hardening. The environment turning hazardous as tires crunched gravel outside. They slipped toward the rear stairwell. The cannery's corridors echoing with their steps, the scent of damp brick and exhaust rising. But as the first van's door slammed, a muffled radio crackle filtering through. Vasquez secured. Boys en route. Her blood iced. Had Gino's spies grabbed Marco? The race against time ignited, Vincent's shock the spark, but would the Code's victory demand a sacrifice too steep before the dock's confrontation? The safe house's back exit loomed, dawn's light spilling in like a false promise. But Elena's phone buzzed once more. Unknown sender. He's with us. Trade the ledgers. The true threat organized, the cost personal. Exposure of her heart, or the found family's fracture. The rear stairwell of the cannery loft plunged into a dim spiral of concrete and iron railings, the dawn's tentative light filtering through narrow slits like hesitant fingers probing the gloom. Elena's boots echoed softly on the steps, each one a measured beat against the rising panic clawing her chest, the phone's latest text searing her mind. He's with us. Trade the ledgers. The air down here was cooler, laced with the musty tang of old oil and river damp seeping up from unseen cracks, the generator's distant thrum vibrating through the walls like a fading pulse. Luca moved ahead, tablet in hand mapping the exit to a concealed alley, his bruised frame tense but unyielding, the cut on his knuckles a dark smear in the low light. "They've got Marco," Elena whispered, her voice cracking like the storm's last thunder, autonomy fracturing under the weight of maternal fear. The single mom's code, protect at all costs, clashed with the entanglement she'd allowed, Luca's world now a snare around her independence. She gripped the railing, knuckles white, the metal cold and unforgiving. How? The sitter. Compromised, Luca cut in, low and precise, pausing at a landing to check his feed. The drone overhead captured the convoy's vans idling, Rossi men fanning out with practiced efficiency, their raincoats glistening under the strengthening sun. No sirens yet. Vincent's discretion held the line, but human error had let Gino's rot spread, leaks buying time for this grab. Gino's play, use the boy as leverage, force the ledger's handoff. Docks at noon now, shipments rerouted, crews exposed if we don't move. His blue eyes met hers, shadowed with the sun's burden. Reject the Empire's chains, yet honor the code that spared innocence. Possessiveness flickered, not to own, but to shield, a vow shaped by his mother's loss, pulling her into a found alliance she both craved and resisted. They burst into the alley, the transition jarring. Narrow confines flanked by graffiti-scarred dumpsters, the asphalt steaming from the night's rain, carrying the sharp scent of wet garbage and exhaust from the approaching vans. Luca's SUV waited, camouflaged under a tarp at the far end, engine pre-warmed via remote. But as they sprinted, tires screeched around the corner, a lead van blocking the mouth, two figures emerging, pistols low but ready, suppressors glinting. "Stop! Ledgers for the kid!" one barked, voice rough with Rossi bravado, the morning light casting long shadows that turned the alley into a trap. Elena skidded to a halt, heart slamming, the pull-push intensifying. Run alone, or stand with Luca's code? He stepped forward, hands raised, tablet tucked away, his stance a calculated yield. Gino's calling shots. Tell him the trace is out. Vincent knows. Trades off, boys coming back clean. Tight words, stakes rising like the sun's glare off puddles, revealing the investigative thread. Behavioral tells in Gino's emails, access codes tying him to the convoy's plates, faked but traceable via city cams Elena had looped earlier. The lead man hesitated, radio crackling with static, jammer residue lingering, institutional limits exposing the crew's overreach. But the second van pulled up, doors sliding open to reveal Marco, wide-eyed but unharmed, flanked by a nervous driver, the boy's curly hair tousled, clutching his backpack like a shield. "Mom?" he called, voice small amid the tension, the sight twisting Elena's gut. Innocence caught in criminal logistics. No supernatural veil, just raw human cost. "Marco!" She surged forward, Luca matching her step, his hand grazing her back. A subtle anchor, loyalty over fear. The men tensed, but a distant roar cut the standoff. Vincent's armored convoy thundering down the service road, black SUVs with tinted menace, guards deploying in fluid rotations honed from years of docked defenses. Gino's betrayal cracked wide. The boss's shock at Elena's identity fueling a purge, his code demanding excision without collateral spill. The Rossi men faltered, radios erupting in chaos. "Pull back! Moretti's inbound!" They retreated, piling into vans that peeled out in a spray of gravel, leaving Marco stumbling forward into Elena's arms. She knelt, enveloping him, the boy's warmth a balm against the alley's chill, tears mixing with the dew on his jacket. "It's okay, mijo. We're safe." But the victory bit deep. Exposure raw. Her life now under Vincent's protective gaze. Autonomy traded for the family's vow. No innocence harmed, but at the price of shadows lingering. Luca knelt beside them, his touch light on Marco's shoulder. The hacker's isolation fracturing into something broader, a found family sketched in the dawn's light. Vincent's lead SUV halted, the magnate emerging, his presence commanding yet restrained, silver hair catching the sun. He approached slowly, eyes softening at the boy, the shock of Elena's role resolving into respect. A widow's resilience mirroring his lost wife's, her ethics aligning with his code. "Vasquez," he said, voice gravel soft. "You've guarded more than data. The ledgers stay buried. Gino's exiled. Rossi hit thwarted at the docks. No easy win. Crews would whisper of the purge, feds sniffing closer, but the threat organized and dismantled through credible work. Traces, rotations, human tells." Elena stood, Marco between them. The alley's hazards fading as the convoy secured the perimeter. Trust had won over suspicion, bonds tested and tempered, but the cost echoed. Her freelance world upended, Luca's pledge a quiet future amid the Empire's edges. "No chains," she murmured to him, meeting his gaze. The spark now a steady flame, protection not possession, autonomy woven with chosen loyalty. Weeks later, in the fortified safe house on Fullerton, a penthouse overlooking the lake, its vast windows framing the endless blue, Elena watched Marco play on the balcony, guarded but free, the wind carrying the fresh scent of water and possibility. Vincent's code held. Shipments secured, betrayals cauterized, the family's legacy restrained by vows renewed. Luca joined her, his arm brushing hers. No words needed. The adventure's spoils paled, material shields, status whispers, against the true treasure. Memories etched in rain-slick escapes, loyalty outlasting power's raw edge, a transformed triad where isolation yielded to found family. The river's distant murmur seemed to agree, a natural close to the storm. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.